Money!
What Your Bank Doesn't Tell You, a podcast by UMushroom.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our podcast, What Your Bank Doesn't Tell You. I'm very excited to have Vlad here at the table with me. Vlad is in our team on the tech side. And actually, you also chose the motto or the title of today's podcast, what is, you are nobody, but you have the courage. And I believe it almost says it all. Welcome, Vlad.
Hello, Tonya. It's very nice for me to be talking here, and I feel very privileged. Thank you.
You know, and for us, for Luba and for me, it's very exciting to see how our younger team members, how they got into investing, even though the original background might be quite a bit different. And therefore, I'm really excited to have you here, to hear your story, to hear how you got into investing. And I believe all of you can learn a lot from Vlad. Welcome, and tell us a bit about your background.
So, first of all, thanks for having me here. I really appreciate working here with you guys. The culture is amazing, and everything I like to do is you provide all the liberty for us to do everything I like to do.
He's doing an amazing job.
And yes, thanks to you and the culture you provide. And I'm not sure I can help people with my knowledge about investing, but I think I come maybe from a background that maybe could appeal to people like me. And to say a couple of things about myself. I studied languages at university, and I started being interested in computer science. So I also started studying computer science. And like a lot of people may be interested in informatics, they try to search for information everywhere and to do kind of things themselves, right? Mm-hmm. To do DIY.
Definitely. And also this empowerment, this is a big topic for UMushroom. And yesterday, when we quickly pre-discussed the podcast, you also said that you're kind of the nerdy but very curious person. And you try to sort out things by yourself and to find solutions. So maybe you can explain us a bit how you became curious about investing and how you sorted out the very first steps, or how did you get orientation?
I think I'm beginning to be a bit old now, but I think my generation started maybe investing through, if I'm being honest, a lot of, gaming,
say it.
Gambling on the cryptos, maybe. But, if we might call that investing, that could be a good question, right?
It's the first experience in the financial markets overall.
That's for sure. Yeah, that's for sure. And I think as a techie as well, we also like, in a kind of way, to feel maybe that we have the technicality and this knowledge of technicality, and that the crypto world could give you, makes you a bit feel like you're superior in a kind of way, where actually in a world where you actually don't have a lot of leverage, where you don't have a lot of power. And in this kind of world, all this technical knowledge can make you realize that, even finance people that rule the world don't know as much as you do in the tech world, you know.
I see. So the cryptos, they somehow gave you an excitement in the end, no? But you also learned a lot. That's my understanding. Even though you can argue whether crypto investments are real investments or it's more gambling, as you said. But still, it's my impression that it was a very good experience for you. And you took out of this experience also quite a bit of know-how, what you could use then for the traditional financial market.
Yes, and by looking at things you don't understand at first, cryptos might appeal to maybe a younger generation, and like I said, you just get into some technicalities, and then you realize that maybe the financial world, I have to be careful with associations here, but in some kind of way are not that different, or the crypto world maybe is in the financial world. So just as an example, maybe, I started just realizing when you buy a crypto, you have to buy it obviously with, first of all, maybe not francs, but dollars. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then all this knowledge about exchanges comes into play. And then you realize that, but you buy in dollars, but then first on a crypto platform, you have to buy their token to buy Bitcoins. So the value of the Bitcoin is expressed in terms of the value of the native token of the platform. So what is actually the value of this token of the platform? And we have seen with all these recent stories, maybe with, not to cite one in particular, but some crypto exchanges that went bankrupt. And you can see that all this discussion about underlying assets backing up currencies or cryptos, all those things you just realize you have to start asking more questions about everything, and maybe start asking more questions about, if you start questioning a cryptocurrency, you could also think, but if I'm buying some securities in dollars, what is the underlying asset of the dollar? Some things like this, for example.
Very interesting. And you're touching a very important point, and it's the consideration what has real value. And it's also part of our motto at UMushroom. We have this movement, Know Your Worth, and exactly to raise the awareness, what has what value and what is valuable to me, and in what do I trust also when it comes to investing. And in this sense, you don't have to feel bad at all being a crypto investor or gambler or however you want to call it, because I really believe you took some very important takeaways from that. And by the way, when I was your age, we were kind of investing or gambling with derivatives. And in our age, then we realized, okay, the investment banks like Lehman Brothers, okay, they are also not, they also went bankrupt, or the bank went bankrupt. So I think it's a very similar experience, what you do also at the beginning of becoming an investor, doing something more playful with money, which usually you don't put your savings into such trades, right? It's more of gaining the experience. Coming back to you, for me, it would also be interesting then to see how you transitioned from the crypto world into maybe more the traditional investing or finance world.
Yes, but I still didn't want to be a finance bro, from a crypto bro to become a finance bro, because...
You're too modest.
I think of the investment and my knowledge about investment not as someone who might, thank God, not recommend or advise, or not at all. It's just... I look at my knowledge about investing as a general knowledge, and actually as a citizen, living in a society. In school, we don't learn much about investing, and I think we maybe should. And just like maybe my dad likes to reverse engineer and just know how a car works, or just your finances in general work, you should maybe also know things that make sense in our society as citizens. And for example, I just started asking myself, what is the third pillar? What is the second pillar? And those kind of things. And I think our platform, UMushroom, can help debunk and really make you start looking into things more.
Of course, gathering information is one of the most important topics. And I would also recommend to all of you, when you commute, just spend about 5 minutes reading about the political news, and maybe you can follow just the very basic financial information at the very beginning. But when we spoke yesterday and prepared the podcast, you were also explaining me, and I was really astonished about the way how you approached finance or investing, that you have a very clear recipe how to go along. And it would be great if you could share that with our listeners and viewers.
Yeah, as I said, it's all about techie being a bit DIY, right? It's a bit where I find a lead, I go. So first, I think you have to realize, it's an obvious statement. We say it all the time in the financial world, but know what type of investor you are. And first of all, what do you want to invest for? Because how you're going to react to your investments matters a lot.
Can you give an example, or what kind of investor are you?
So, for example, since you talked about the crypto world, there's a lot of reaction here involved. Sudden jumps, ups and downs. You kind of learn about yourself, what you can take, putting more money, less money, all this psychological stuff. and realizing that sometimes it's not about being in the moment, but being more prepared. And this being prepared matters more to me, at least. So realizing being the type of investor for maybe shorter term, long term, yes, everything you can find on our platform about yourself.
So we know that Vlad is well prepared, has nerves made out of steel, but this might not apply to everybody. So I think here the important point is to know, are you a long-term investor? Are you rather a short-term investor? How much risk you want to take? And another important point you mentioned yesterday as well is, to what extent you want to be hands-on, or you want to do the investment and then just go on holidays and revisit your portfolio maybe after a few weeks only. I believe these are very important points, right?
Yes, exactly. First, you mentioned the risk, and I didn't learn much about finance before. I didn't have a lot of economics class, and risk to me was always this secular kind of way of thinking about risk, not putting all your eggs in the same basket. Yeah, of course. But you actually start learning about volatility. And actually, I kind of learned about volatility with cryptos, right? And associating other types of risks as well. Bankruptcy risks, of course, and your bank account, because on those crypto platforms that got bankrupt, you could also lose what are the insurances there.
It could happen with normal banks as well, no?
Yeah, it could. Then after risk, you mentioned also your involvement into all this. I'm more of a type of I like programming, right? Programming is for people that think ahead a lot and then let everything run while they sit back and enjoy. At least until the next bug comes into play.
Good approach.
So yeah, you have to know, are you willing to follow financial news every day, every week, and not only follow, but adjust your strategy. I don't like to begin things if I don't maybe fully understand them. And I realized that this is a big hindrance to starting. Sometimes I need to know a lot. Some people just start right away. I think I might need a bit more of this courage, right? To start small. This is important as well. And we talked about risk, about volatility. I think risk management should be the priority, right? How do you define for yourself the risk management? I learned through you guys, through all your podcasts, that risk is unavoidable. And you cannot think about investment without thinking about risk. So it's like maybe an exam during university you don't want to think about, but the D-Day you have to think about it. And by thinking always about it, you kind of take the right steps every time by taking the time to think about it.
Yeah, life is risky in general, but the important point is also when it comes to investing, when you are not in a position to avoid risk, that you are aware of the risks you are taking. I think this is very important. And my understanding is, in your case, okay, you are the person who gets everything organized and then is a bit hands off. So I think this is very important. That's, as you said, you knew how much time you want to invest once you laid out everything. You knew how much risk you wanted to take. And then as a conclusion, maybe also I still call you beginner investor, even though I think you have plenty of know-how in the meanwhile, is that you decided for ETFs, because this is a very efficient vehicle. Maybe you can also explain, from knowing what kind of investor you are, how you did the step to then choose the effective ETFs you were investing in.
Yes. Yeah, I like this very algorithmic way of thinking. Starting point, yes or no, then you choose a path. Yes or no, then you go. Then, am I a type of, what do you want to save for? What do you want to invest for? Retirement? Then I think maybe more long-term stuff suits you better. And more diversification and things you maybe don't look for a long time. Yeah, ETFs were for me. at least index-based, because of course ETFs can also be tricky. The world of ETFs can be also misleading as well.
This is true. You know what? Let's do an exercise. And I know we usually don't do that. We don't mix the podcast with UMushroom, with our business. But I believe now it would be really nice if you can just very hands-on show us how you selected your ETFs. That would be really nice. And to see how you put together your portfolio.
Sure. So this is our platform, UMushroom, investment selection platform. So on this homepage, you can see all the news, your dashboard. But what interests me is the investment page right here. You can start by just looking at what is recommended, what is trending right now globally here. And I really like it because all those trending ETFs are actually the most popular, right, in our Swiss brokers. So, for example, we talked about risk strategy and as well diversification. You have the possibility to choose geographies. And if you want to buy, for example, for each geographies here, one, Japan, certain percentage of Latin America, etc., a certain percentage of North America, you can diversify geographically, but you also can diversify by looking at what ETFs are recommended throughout sectors, right?
So this means you put together a portfolio not just with one ETF, but you have multiple ones to cover different geographies and sectors, etc. Is this correct?
Yes, exactly. And I think as a beginner, it's really important that you define what are your restrictions, because having restrictions is actually very beneficial for a beginner, right? You cannot go to 1,000 places. You can start really only in a couple of places, right? So my broker has a lot of ETFs that are relevant geographically. So I just did the geographic diversification, right? And yeah.
And I think this is also an important point, because if you take a global ETF, you typically have a much heavier weight on the US and on the tech sector. So choosing your way of picking different geographies and maybe also sectors manually has a certain advantage over one broad index or one broad ETF, which is also a good solution, but...
Yes, exactly. If you go, for example, to, let's say, I like really much this all countries iShare MSCI, and you can see the top 10 positions here are clearly American tech, right? And if you compare that to the SP 500, I can show you how to compare as well.
Please,
ETFs.
that would be interesting.
Here you add this ETF to our compare platform here. You go back where you were. You select S&P 500. You can see that the
same.
top 10, yes, exactly. And you just compare them. And well, this is only 1 year. Pretty similar here. Performance, pretty similar. At least I don't know how you would say, but correlated maybe.
No, absolutely. You can see there are the same drivers behind the performance.
Yes, exactly. And you can also compare the ongoing charges. This is what I really like to do, actually, to see key pieces of information about ETFs, such as, is it accumulative, distributive? So you might choose the S&P 500 instead of buying just the whole world, but the whole world then maybe gets readjusted every now and then. And this adjustment of the weight of every security that is encapsulated inside here would not maybe be the same in the future with this one. So you have to take account all these parameters. And it's really important that you start with small amount of parameters, because every time you change one, all the others change. And for me, as a beginner, it was at first a bit overwhelming, right? But as I said, it's really important to, I think, restrict your realm of possibilities first.
Oh, I agree. And I think that's one of the most important tips for beginners. Once you know what kind of investor you are, whether you're hands-on, hands-off, long-term, short-term, etc., that you really choose investments which don't overwhelm you. So start simple. And we see here I mean, the all world index and the US index, they are very similar. The costs are different, but just pick one and start with one. Start observing it, this very specific market. Choose a market where you're comfortable, and always have a look at the ongoing charges, because these are the fees you're paying to the manager of the ETF. And then over time, the better your understanding becomes, the more you can expand your portfolio. But one important point is it's good to be invested in a very broad market, and to participate in the market, and to also to collect the dividends in the end.
Oh yes, and it can become very nerdy, right? All those talks about dividends, and you start realizing that banks and brokers make money when you buy a security in another currency. Of course, they take some benefits there, and more and more parameters come into play.
True. Yeah. Maybe one point, when you go on one investment, you can also briefly highlight which information you focus on when you go on one of the ETFs.
Yes. So let's go to this one I really like. So I like having my main information here in one look: the sectors, the geography, the styles, and the objective here that you can read. And this clearly gives you what the ETF is about, what its exposure is, and the type of risks that you're exposing yourself to. Then, as we saw earlier, you can see the top 10 holdings, which gives a rough idea of the ETF, the exposure. You can sort our chart here. And here you have a view of all the important information about the ETF. And I usually don't use this view because I consider myself as a more advanced beginner investor. So I like more this view right here, where pieces of information are displayed. The ongoing charges I really like to look at. I like to see if it's accumulating or distributing. As I said, I'm more of a kind of prepare and lay back, relax kind of guy. So I don't want to be reinvesting each time, go to my platform and reinvesting my dividends. Some platforms, by the way, could also make profits out of your dividends. So maybe sometimes it's good to check. This is not unimportant, right? And of course, all the basic information about the asset managers, and a really informative piece of information here, the fund size, of course. And if it's
typically the fund size also gives an indication whether it's an investment which is preferred by many of the investors. So the bigger the ETF, the more attractive it's considered by the market.
Yes.
Good. No, very interesting, and also for us, it was also nice to see that by becoming an investor, you also were using the platform, giving a lot of feedback and discovering how the different information is used. And just to recap, and correct me if I didn't listen carefully. Number one, it's extremely important that you know what kind of investor you are, whether you are investing long-term, short-term, hands-off, hands-on, whatever. Then, second step, choose your investments according to your investor type. At the beginning, typically we can say that ETFs are a very convenient instrument because they are diversified in itself already and usually a very efficient investment in terms of fees. Then third, use a platform, be it UMushroom, be it another financial platform where you can handle the information easily and do your very basic research on these platforms in order to put together a portfolio. Always be aware of the risks you're taking, and there is no good risk, there is no bad risk. It's very individual, and just be aware what kind of risks you're taking.
Yeah, I might add that just to sum up, that at the end of your journey, you start realizing that your investment strategies are like a spectrum, right? You start at one end of a spectrum, you start investing with all those restrictions as a beginner. But then you might read or learn about more strategies.
Yeah, it's practice, like with everything. And one important point to mention here as well is that finance is not more difficult than any other topic. It has the perception to be extremely difficult, but I would say we can both agree that it's absolutely manageable and not different from any other topic.
Yes. And like you say, not different from even other topics or even hobbies that I have. I like taking photos with manually driven cameras, and you start realizing that knowing about more and more parameters doesn't necessarily make better photos at the start, but at the end you have more control over everything. And just like for investing, you might start with, I don't know, maybe the third pillar or something, and then you might look into the third pillar and realize that you can maybe even simulate the third pillar with your own investments with lower charges. But then again, you don't have the fiscal advantage of the third pillar. Some things like this, you start realizing that everything makes sense. All the strategies have their place and where you want to put them. And by the way, if you want to discover what type of investor you are, just go on our landing page and take some time to just answer a quiz, and you will receive by mail a freebie and all information that will get you started.
You're highlighting a very important point. The investor quiz, which is available to everybody, really gives you plenty of insights what's actually important to you when it comes to investing. You get a roadmap, you get the freebie and the surprise at the end. With this, I would like to close the podcast. Thank you very much for sharing your experience, Vlad. If you have any questions, please write us at hello@umushroom.com. We are very happy to take up your questions and to answer them or build in your questions into our upcoming topics. With this, I wish you a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you.
Money!
What Your Bank Doesn't Tell You, a podcast by UMushroom.